Hey guys, it is finale day. Well, the day after finale day. And I want to know if you felt as though the Vanderpump Rules finale lived up to your expectations. Today, we're going to be recapping with a very special guest who goes by the name of Coco Mocoe. I found her on TikTok, but she's been a social media analyst for years. I call her an expert, but she says not expert. I saw that on your bio, Coco. I'm going to pull her up. How are
Hello.
you?
Hi, I'm good. Oh my gosh, thank you for the intro. Yes,
Oh,
sorry, go ahead.
of course. So I wanted to ask you actually, because I consider you a social media expert, but in your bio, you explicitly say something about like, no, not expert, but just like a lover or something like that of social media.
Y- Yeah, so I have worked in the like media space since 2018. So it's
Mhm.
been 5 years now, and I specialize for the last couple years on TikTok specifically, but I always say like I like to say never an expert, always learning. Just that way I'm always, I feel like once you become an expert in something, you become stagnant.
I love that. You guys, if you're on TikTok, you do need to follow Coco Moco. She has a lot of
Oh,
incredible insights, including on Vanderpump Rules, and she's got a podcast. All of her information is linked in the description box. I want to give a quick shout out as well to our new members. We've got Ashley and Whitney. Welcome, and thank you so much for signing up. Guys, I just did a video for my channel members about how this guy tried to abduct me outside of a club last weekend at like 3 in the morning. It was crazy. Yeah. You know what he does? He comes up to me. I called like my Uber, my Bolt, and he's like, oh, like I have a private ride sharing business. Do you want to come with me? I was like, absolutely not. Who are you? So I've
oh
got the
my god,
story of that in my members section. I know. I
that is
know.
scary.
Well, has that ever happened to you?
It hasn't happened to me, but I also don't drink. I used to drink a lot in college, so I drive myself everywhere. So
Uh-huh.
I barely drive in Ubers and stuff anymore. So I don't get in rideshare apps a ton, but I know it happens a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Smart. It was wild. Now, you guys, everybody in the chat, thank you so much for being here. You know, every week I ask how you would rate the episode on a scale from 1 to 10. Coco, let's start with you and then let's head over to the chat and see how they rated the episode. What do you think about it?
I would say an 8 because I do think it was like one of the better. I mean, I just think I'm biased. I think this show's one of like the greatest shows for many reasons. The only thing that I didn't like was Tom Sandoval felt like the main character. Like a lot of the scenes followed him and his interactions.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, maybe they were trying to show how he was almost changing his persona based on who he was talking to. So maybe it was like the producers trying to like show the audience what they were dealing with, but it was just a lot of Tom. It was a little bit jarring. What do you think?
You know, there were so many things to me that stuck out in a weird way. Like, I have had, and some of my members here in the chat as well, we've had this kind of like conspiracy that there's something about this that seems forced and like staged in some respects. And I got that feeling again, like watching the episode, like, um to me, for example, I think like the lack of tears in the confrontation between Ariana and Sandoval, I'm like, it has only been 2 days. Her whole world has been flipped upside down, like not just like the boyfriend, but the best friend. And she's sitting there in front of this guy, like dry faced and stuff. Like some of the stuff she said to him to me felt like a rehearsed like monologue. Like, let me like, make sure I say this and stuff. Like, and then like the girls, they were all meeting up. They were all wearing black. She comes out in a different outfit. Like there were Kristen, I felt like, and we'll get into it later, but like her kind of like cameo to me also felt a little bit like, oh, is this to kind of like lay the groundwork to bring her back? Because what was this, right? Like, do you like see where we're coming from with that, or are we crazy?
Yeah, no, I totally get. Okay, so I think that you're onto something with like kind of the fake in some regards. I also think whenever I have like whenever I see Ariana in the preview for the reunion where she's like, you don't deserve to look at this, I
Yeah.
always kind of remember that like Ariana did improv and she takes sketch comedy very seriously, as she says. So I think sometimes she probably does rehearse things, and I think a lot of the cast does, because a lot of them at one point wanted to be actors. And so I think that like that's where some of that comes from as well, is it's almost like an improv scene. Like, how
Mhm.
would you react to this? Like, and like if you were in an improv scene and then they kind of talk it out in that way. So yeah, that would be my guess on also why sometimes it just seems kind of like a little bit robotic.
That is such a good point. And I forgot about it too, like, wow, they do have this kind of background. And that could be why these things are not hitting. Like, for example, there was even a moment where she was with a friend, and I was like, oh, how coincidental that the friend gets up, asks her if she wants anything. She says no. And that's when Tom comes down. He asks her if she wants anything, and she says, for you to croak, basically. I was like, I don't know. Like,
Yeah, very improv. Yeah, very
yes.
like comedy. Yeah.
Mhm.
I do think it was like genuine in some ways, because I know they picked up filming like when it was like, you know, where you were when it happened. I was in a hotel in Vegas, and me and my friends were like, wait, Raquel was with Sandoval the whole time. And then TMZ was reporting that the vans basically pulled up at their house. So, but my biggest, I don't mean to trail off, but just my biggest question that was not answered was, how did they confirm that the affair was happening? Like, did Ariana find out because TMZ contacted her? How did TMZ confirm it? Like, I was really curious about, at what point did they, like, I know she found out from the phone,
Yeah.
but I wonder, like, how did it get out there? Is what I'm actually trying to say, is like, did Ariana leak it? Like, how did TMZ know, okay, this story is happening, let's run with it? That's what I was curious about.
And so immediately after, because I do feel like they could have like really kept it hush hush and shocked us at the end with this trailer, like, guess what just happened, But I feel like the Lala to me is a big blabber. So I imagine she talked to a contact at TMZ or
True.
something like that. I know for sure Katie was a source in something, because you know how they say, oh, a source said this or source said that.
Yeah.
There was this one time where a source said that like something happened, blah blah, and they're both going to be lit on fire at the reunion, or they were lit on. I'm like, who talks like
Yes.
that? But Katie.
Yes, Katie does. Such a Capricorn. I love her. But and maybe Lala sent it to Daryl and he leaked it. I just love saying like send it to Daryl out of context, but yes.
And I do want to get your opinion on her wearing the "Send It to Daryl" sweatshirt. It felt so meta to me. What did you think about that at the end? Let me pull up the
Yes.
photo. I got it
Oh my
somewhere.
god, and it was funny because they were at, like, a fancy bar and everyone was dressed up, and she showed up in sweats. I kind of loved it. I think that her outfit felt more relevant to what was happening. Like, I
Yeah.
think they like, you could tell all of them just, like, probably, and I mean, I would too if I was in there. Like, you could tell all of them just probably put, like, dry shampoo in their hair and, like, hadn't, like, showered and were stressed and, like, anxious. And
Mhm.
I felt like Lala's presentation seemed more fitting for, like, the situation. But I mean,
Mhm.
Lala, again, I don't mean to keep bringing up zodiacs. I just done a video on it. That's why it's like on my mind. But Lala is a Virgo, and so is Lisa Vanderpump. So they know how to market, they know how to do business. So Lala knew this episode was going to be one of the most watched in the history of Vanderpump. She's going to wear her merch and make sure people know it and see it and buy it. That's what I thought it was. It was like she knew this was the biggest billboard she was going to get on. So yeah.
That's what I felt like as well. And I thought it was not a coincidence. That's why I got a photo that Tom Schwartz also thought to brand his business, publicize his business. I've never seen him wear this throughout the season,
Oh,
but look at his hat, Tom Tom. Like these things kind of to me
yes.
felt like odd. You know what I mean? About the
You're
episode.
so right. I think they knew it was going to be one of the most watched, and they were like, how do we market ourselves the best we can?
Mm-hmm. Now, you guys, I'm reading your chats about the episode. So many of you guys are rating it super highly. I think the lowest rating it got was 8. The highest was a 15 out of 10. I agree. It was a really, really like captivating episode at the end of the day. Now, why don't we start from the beginning? So at the beginning, Ariana lets us know how she found out about the affair. She was supporting Tom at a karaoke concert, and then his phone dropped. Someone gave it to her. And so her intuition told her to go through it. And she saw a video of them kind of like, what do you call it? Like, it's not sexting, but like whatever on video. And Tom said that he would normally delete a video like that. Did you catch that in his confessional?
Yeah, and he was like, he said he alluded to like he had a busy day or something, and he
Yeah.
like forgot. Yeah, I mean, I also think in a way he wanted to be caught. Like, I don't know. I think that he loves the attention, and I don't think he understood how much negative attention he would get from this. I think he would play it like he did season 2 to season 3 with Ariana and Kristen, but he
Mhm.
underestimated how popular Ariana was. So I don't know. I think he also maybe wanted to get caught in a way, but I could be wrong.
I felt that way too, because I do believe when he says that he had tried to like tell her he wasn't happy and wanted to break up, and maybe she kind of wanted to like cling to the relationship. And so he probably did feel like this is the only way I can get out of this. And we will get to that a bit later, because it felt like low key confirmed in their kind of like confrontation together. But it's still, I still don't think it's fair, right? At the end of the
Yeah.
day. Um,
Yeah. I also, sorry, just want to interject really quickly to add to what you're saying. And when he says, I tried to tell her I was unhappy, what I think it was, and we kind of saw this, was he was trying to bait her into breaking up and being the bad guy. I'll always remember a conversation I had in high school with this one guy where he was like, yeah, whenever I don't want to be with a girl anymore, I'm really mean to her until she breaks up with me and then I can be the victim. And so I think that was what Tom meant by like, I tried to end things. I think he was like, she didn't take the bait is what he was
mhm.
codedly saying.
You know what? I wouldn't be surprised. I feel like that's the MO for a lot of guys. I don't know why they're afraid to like break up with someone, or is it fear? Is it cowardice? I don't know. But yeah, like I definitely do feel like a lot of them do start acting that way when they no longer want to be in a relationship, which to me is really weird. It's like grow up. He's like 40 years old. Like you should know how to break up at this point.
Yeah, they just want to be like the victim. So
Mhm.
it's like easier for the other person to break up and then they can spin that story.
Exactly. How did you feel about kind of the fixation on his friendship with Raquel when he was having his sit down with Ariana? I kind of felt like I don't know. I kind of felt like if I were Ariana, I would have too much pride to be upset on camera over his friendship with Raquel. You know what I mean? Because she was like, are you going to see her? Are you going to hug her? Are you going to kiss her? Are you going to do this, that, and the other? I was like, oh God, I know how she feels, but I would be too like, I'm not putting this on camera. Did that kind of like stick out to you in a certain way?
Yeah, the way that I interpreted it was that she was trying to figure out if Tom was going to do Ariana the way he did Kristen, where if
Mhm.
you remember that relationship, he emphasized that Tom and Ariana were really good friends. She's like my best friend. He kept saying that. And so I think that Ariana saw that play happening because she had been a part of it 10 years before. And I
Mhm.
think that her fixation on his friendship with Raquel was her trying to figure out if he was going to be able to pull off what he did to Kristen when he got with her years back. Because I do like Ariana, but I don't think she was innocent in that situation. I think she understood exactly what was happening and was playing into it. And I think that she was trying to see if
Mhm.
it was going to like go down the same way. And that was why they kept talking. And then she was like, I don't give an F about your friendship. So I think that was also her way of being like trying to like move the narrative, like you guys aren't friends, like you did this with me, like I think she was trying to push him away from being able to pull off what he did with her.
Ah, okay, I see. See, I kind of feel bad for saying it, but that's why I don't really feel bad for Ariana in this situation. I feel like she got the exact man that she bargained for. Like, just like you said, he's pulling off the same playbook. So if you see a man do that to someone else with you, just know your time will eventually come. And the fact that this is like a decade later, full circle, I feel like that's the worst part, that it didn't happen sooner almost, so that you have less invested in him, like the eggs, the house, the debt.
Yeah. Yes, I honestly I talked about this in my podcast, but I think that he saw Ariana as more of like a bank account and a business partner than he even saw Tom Schwartz, and like
Mhm.
he and I think that that's why he was with her for so long, is like he probably saw how popular their fancy AF cocktail book was and was like, "Oh, she's like monetizable," just knowing how Sandoval is. And I think that he like stayed with her for that reason. And yeah, and so that's why they have a house together. Like all of this is invested now. And it's not just a breakup like with Kristen where they had to return a DVR box, which was like so stupid that they stayed together for 5 years because they shared a cable account. But yeah, it's going to be a messy breakup for sure, I think financially.
I completely agree because not only did they buy the home together, but he had to mortgage against it. And I believe she signed off on it and everything as well. So I think that's something that falls on both of them. But will he be ethical and pay the extra because the debt was pulled out for his business and not her? I think that's something we will discover as the time goes by. Do you think that he's going to be kind of ethical with it, or is he gonna? I don't know.
No, he's gonna hold that over her. Like that is he has no power in this dynamic anymore. The only sort of controller power he has now is the financial, like the loans that he took out on behalf of them as a couple for the house. And I think he's going to draw that out as long as he can to try and do damage and make up for what he sees as her winning the breakup. So I think he's going to try to like bring her down with him financially as well as like a last laugh kind of thing.
That's so scary considering she did nothing to him, but stand
Yeah.
beside him for all these years. How did you feel? And I want to know in the chat as well, how did you guys feel about the way his sit down with Ariana kind of transitioned into him going to Tom Schwartz's house? Because that to me was a little bit jarring, I have to be honest.
Jarring, like jump scare. Honestly, to me and my friends call them the toxic Toms. But like
Mhm.
I feel like he showed more remorse and emotion and apology to Schwartz in like 30 seconds of him arriving than he did in his entire conversation with Ariana. He was so cold to Ariana. And I thought that was so interesting. It's really like when you live in a patriarchal world, if you're a woman and you're a straight woman and you date men, like there really are so many times where men hold their male friendships in a higher
Mhm.
regard. They feel, besides the sexual part, like they feel more intimately connected to their friends than they do you if they don't see you on the same level. And I felt like Tom and Tom's relationship is such a great example of that, and how they treated their female partners was an example of how they really only saw them as like a vessel to satisfy them sexually. And I don't think that I mean, Schwartz would never talk to Sandoval the way he did Katie. And so, yeah,
Ever. Or a man
yeah,
in general,
no,
Schwartz.
yeah.
Ugh, yeah.
Only James Kennedy, and it's because I think they feel jealousy towards James Kennedy because I feel like James Kennedy is a hustler. Like, love or hate him, like he works hard. He is a hard worker. I think he's going to be successful even after the show, and I think those two men despise him for that. So he's the only
Mhm.
man that they talk down to.
Absolutely. And I want to go back on what you were just saying about how like the men in general typically hold their male friendships in higher regard than their romantic relationships. That to me is so deep because I feel like it's kind of the opposite in female friendships because, and I talk about this on my channel. So people who watch me regularly probably are aware, but I think it was in February, I had to end a female friendship of mine because the girl, like she was very much like when it came to men, like there was this huge, you know what I mean? And then our friendship of like 12, 13, 14 years is like down here, to me, it was very jarring and shocking. The long story short is she was supposed to come to visit me here in Paris. She lives in Montreal for years since I moved here, and she never did. But then she meets a French guy, and a couple months later, she's suddenly here. We barely saw each other while she was here. And then there was a time where like we were supposed to meet at this like nightclub at this time. They went early, got in early, and I couldn't get in because there was this long line. And she was like, "Oh, sorry about that." I was like, "Okay, I cannot be friends with a girl like this." You know what I mean? Like, so it's crazy how men will like ride for each other. And male friendships, no offense, but I feel like, are they not typically shallow? Like, are men not complaining that they have no one they can be emotionally intimate with, So it's crazy. I don't know. I find that
Um,
sad.
Yeah, I'm sorry that happened. It really does suck when like you lose a friend. And I feel like that's something that happens maybe when you're in like high school and college. But then
Right.
once like I'm 27 now, it's like I don't think I have any friends in my life who are like that. And
Mhm.
whenever I have a relationship now, but like I'm always so careful with I'm a girl's girl first. Like my
Yeah.
boyfriends know I'm like this is my friends. Like they're very important to me. And because like I don't know, I just your friends are always there for you. And yeah, I the Tom and Tom dynamic though I think is just on a whole other level of men and loyalty, but also shallowness. I don't know, it's just really interesting.
Yeah, to me, they're the true soulmates because because I think it's after this that Tom Sandoval goes and visits Lisa Vanderpump, he packs on the tears, but to me, I did not see any tears actually falling. It was dry heaving dramatics because she wouldn't hug him. I believe it is. What did you think?
Oh my god, I think that the LVP scene to me was like, so this is why I think producers did it, because the producers on Vanderpump Rules are pretty shady. Like they will, I mean, I think it's part of what makes the show good is like they'll make fun of the cast and not always in a mean way, but like anyways, I think in this scene they put this scene in there because sometimes I feel like LVP scenes to me are just fillers, but they wanted to show how Tom Sandoval was almost morphing. It's kind of creepy when you even see how he can change his mannerisms, because mannerisms are something that are subconscious, but he can even change his mannerisms based on who he's talking to. And the LVP scene was like, he was like, you can tell he went into it trying to be like, should I be more calculated and business in this convo? That wasn't working. So then he put
Mm.
on the antics, and that didn't work either. But I do think it's interesting. I do want to say, like, I like LVP in some ways, but and I talk about this in my podcast too, but like I do feel like she is a lot more forgiving to the men and
Yes.
even gives them more business opportunities. Like she
Hmm.
would have never invited Kristen Dowdy over in season 3 to have a conversation with her like that. She was so harsh to Kristen Dowdy. And Kristen Dowdy, I don't think, I mean, she was doing things that the men were doing, and Tom got a restaurant out of it, and Kristen Dowdy got ostracized. So I don't know. I think LVP was trying to show that she was like removed from Tom Sandoval, but the fact
Hmm.
that she was even having a conversation with him was like, I don't know. She's just very like forgiving of the men, and especially Tom and Tom, in a way that I don't think the female cast would be afforded.
I agree. I feel like I don't know if it's because she's a pick me or if it's because she gets off on the fact that they praise her. They think she's like this beautiful, right? They're always talking
Yeah.
about how she's their crush. And I think that that excites her as an older woman because unfortunately, as we age, we become invisible in society. And so
Yeah.
maybe that's something that like she kind of gets off to when it comes to those guys. Um,
Yeah.
I did want to ask you. So Jessica, she brought this up, and I thought it was interesting when Tom Sandoval is talking to Tom Schwartz. What happens? He's like, oh, he's trying to blame things on Ariana slowly over the episodes, right? He's bringing her coffee, she's not bringing him coffee. He's putting batteries and paper towels in the house. Now, this episode, her fault is that she did not follow him to see if he was lying about going to Schwartz's house. What did you think about that?
Okay, that also is similar to when he said, I got the vibe she didn't want to know. Oh my god. It
Yeah.
to me, like, this is different, but it almost felt like when a doctor like has to give someone bad news, like they don't want to do that. It's just their job. Like, and I couldn't imagine like a doctor being like, "Oh, I got these CT scans back, but like I got the vibe they didn't want to know." So like I didn't tell them.
Yeah.
It's like like what? Like, and that was like him like being like, she didn't follow me. That's like a doctor being like, well, I gave them the scans. It's not my fault they didn't like get a doctorate and can read the scans and like know what it says. It's like it's your job to fill in the blank. And like in a relationship, it's your job to like give them context and understanding and like account for things that you're doing. And
Mhm.
I felt like he was trying to like take, yeah, I mean, it was just so bizarre that he was mad that she didn't follow him to figure it out. I think that he wanted to bait Ariana into being the vicious bad guy like he did with Kristen. Again, I keep harping on that. But I think that in so many ways, Ariana didn't take the bait. And he, like Jessica said, is deeply resentful that he could not
Mhm.
spin the story. And
Mhm.
it's just like, yeah, it's so frustrating. But what did you think?
That's what I felt as well. I feel like he's constantly grasping at straws. He can never come up with anything like concrete to sort of even attempt to justify what it is that he did, like I can't. I really don't. I feel like we're seeing a lot of like really like ugly sides to his personality. I always admit, and Mr. Rogers was kind of teasing me for this earlier. And I talked about it on your podcast, but I was blinded because I used to find him so attractive. And so when I find people wildly attractive, I can be a bit blind to certain things, right? So I just fell for it. But now I'm seeing these ugly things. Like, for example, the way he was like fake crying at Lisa's before I would have fallen for that. But then his genuine cry with Tom Schwartz. But then afterwards, at the end of their conversation, I was like, wait a minute, was that even genuine? Because after Tom Schwartz comforts him, tells him he loves him a million times, he starts opening up about how he's being affected. And what does Sandoval do? He walks away and says, just get off social media. I was like, oh my God, the narc of it all. What the?
He is so cold, and it's funny because it was so, I think it was kind of reminiscent of their relationship as friends, but Tom Schwartz sitting on the kitchen floor, it was like the foyer between the kitchen and the front room, but Tom Schwartz is like sitting on the floor and Trisha Paytas style, like life in shambles, like crisscross on the floor crying, and Tom Sandoval is like standing above him. And I felt like it was almost this like Renaissance painting of how their relationship was, where in a lot of ways, and I dive into this, and I even made a TikTok on it, why I think Tom Schwartz is actually worse than everyone on the cast. There's a couple reasons, and it's because he's a sniper from the side. Like, at least Tom Sandoval and Jax, you know they're awful. They're going to tell you it from the beginning. Like, Jax literally broke up with Laura Lee at an AA meeting. But like Tom Schwartz is like, it's hard to know that he's the enemy when he's wearing the same uniform as you on the battlefield. He can get a lot closer to you. But I think that Schwartz sitting on the floor and Sandoval above him as they're discussing the things that had happened, it was kind of like Schwartz was looking to Sandoval for answers. And in some ways, Schwartz always lowered himself behind Sandoval so that Sandoval could take the hits. But it ended up being their demise. Like it just, them Schwartz on the floor, Sandoval above him. It was like this. I mean, again, I say this show is brilliant because not even an Emmy-winning writer could come up with these settings and the clothes that they wear and the things that they say. And that was one of those scenes. Like, I don't know that in a show like Succession, and I love Succession, they would have someone sitting on like a floor, like begging to the person above them in like their apartment in Valley Village. This cast knows how to do the job well, and they do it.
They do. They are one of a kind. And I want to circle back to Jaleesa's comment because this to me goes along with my conspiracy theory that all of this is too convenient and fake. Because, you know, some of their biggest players, heaviest hitters, got banned from like the Bravo universe because of the controversies of racism, this and that and the other. I feel like the Scandoval is so shocking that people are willing to accept them back. We saw Kristen come back in what to me was a pretty like, I didn't understand it. The casual crystals and the setting, whatever, the intentions on fire. It felt like, hey, let's test the waters and see if people are going to be outraged that we brought her back. Jax and Brittany, they've got that couch thing going on. I know Stassi, she's talking about this on her podcast and people are kind of having less backlash. Is this kind of the thing to go, okay, now we're slowly bringing these people back? That to me feels very, very like, you know, intentional.
Yes. Okay. So, like a couple points you said, love. Number one, Kristen Dowdy. I always say one of my dreams one day, if I live long enough, is to open up a pop culture museum. One thing I would want from this episode is Sheena's white bucket hat. And then another thing would be Kristen's like Adidas slides as she was like stomping out the fire. I'm like, oh my God, it was just so symbolic. Like in like the difference in weather, like Ariana's in Uggs and Kristen Dowdy's in Adidas slides. Like, again, not even like a costume designer on an Emmy winning set could come up with the outfits that they're wearing. But I do think that they are testing the waters because from a production standpoint, they tried to bring in a new cast in season 8 and it flopped. Yeah. And so I think that they're scrambling. I have a theory personally that they intentionally ended this finale with a scene of Sheena and Tom and not the Tom and Ariana, because Sheena and Tom Sandoval are two of the last cast members left from the original cast besides Katie. And I think that it was their farewell episode to Tom Sandoval. Like, I think it was their way of tying up his time on VPR in like a messy bow. The way that Sheena was like going over their relationship and him welcoming her onto the cast on the red carpet in season 1 and then them saying goodbye and she'll miss him. I think that it was their way of saying goodbye to Sandoval. So I think that they're trying to figure out what they're going to do next season. And they're either going to have to go back to old cast members, or I think they should start introducing in like Allie's friend group. I mean, Part of this show that's
Yeah.
fascinating to me is when they are single, and that's one thing I do love about Vanderpump Rules this season is it's one of the only times a reality show besides maybe Housewives showed women empowered after a relationship, not like The Bachelor where women's value is placed on right before they start a relationship and how desirable they are to get married and stuff. But so I think that this show though thrives when a lot of people are like single, whether it's
Mhm.
post divorce or just they've never been together. And I think that the older cast like Jackson them, they're just not as interesting anymore. And so I think the producers were trying to scramble to figure out what they're going to do next season because I don't know, to me it felt like a farewell episode to Tom Sandoval.
You know what? I did not even think about that at all, at all. I want to know what you guys think about Coco's theory in the chat because that to me is very like eye-opening now looking back because you're right. They do kind of do the whole like, let's take a look back, the montage and everything. So that do you think that if Tom Sandoval's leaving, that means that perhaps he's taking Schwartz and Raquel with him because I feel like Tom Schwartz no longer has friends. He's been exposed as well as being like someone who is willing to throw everyone under the bus for Tom Sandoval. And who does Raquel have? I feel like she's got even less people than the two of those guys have.
Yeah, and also like reading the comments too, like a lot of people are mentioning too, like the old cast. I know they had issues with racism. And for me, like the scene where they did the cop car joke and didn't understand why it wasn't funny. Like, yeah, but in terms of Schwartz and Sandoval and Raquel, yeah, I don't know that anyone would want to film with them. And I don't know, I think that Schwartz has proven, and someone in the comments said it as well, that I do think Schwartz is more calculated than everyone else, but I also think that he has cornered himself into being one dimensional. Like, there's
Mhm.
nothing really redeeming about him because he's just Tom Sandoval's talking head. And like Schwartz, I think could have been the number one guy in the group this season. Imagine if he came forward to Ariana and was like, hey, this is happening. Like, so you need to get out. Like, let's come up with a plan. Let's get support around you. Like, he's cheating on you. Schwartz could have redeemed himself and made up for every other season, but he dropped the ball. And so I think like Schwartz to me is so one dimensional. And I think Sandoval and Raquel are just like, I don't know. I mean, I think that people feel cathartic around Sandoval. Like, I think they're just tired of him. And Raquel, I can't imagine the people in her life letting her go back on the show. It sounds like her family maybe had to step in. And that would be why I think she probably ghosted producers. But I also, there was like a minute where she was doing an interview. I don't know if you remember that. And she was like giddy. It was after Sandoval had
Ah,
broke, and she was giddy
mhm.
about how like I always wanted to know what it was like to be with someone I loved. And I'm like, when did she film that scene if she ghosted them? Because they were filming at her apartment a few days after it broke. They must have gotten her into hair and makeup like the day after, maybe. And then
Yeah.
she ghosted them. So, yeah,
Mhm.
I don't know. I think Raquel's going to be hard to get a hold of. I can't imagine her going back on the show.
Oh my God. Well, what a note to leave off on. I wonder what she can do. Like, I feel like influencing will be tough when like no one really likes you at this point. I know she's got a degree, so maybe she'll have to do some kinesiology work or whatever
Yeah.
that entails. It seems to be a good career path at the least. I think she was smart to get
Yes.
that degree.
If I was on her PR team, the first thing I would have done is, and also this reminds me, it was funny when they were talking about Tom's camp is leaking this side of the story or whatever, because I cannot imagine Tom has a camp. He fumbled this so hard. There's nowhere he has a PR agent, and like it's just, probably just Tom and Tom like on a burner email pretending to have a different name saying it's Tom's camp. But if I was on Raquel's team and she had a PR agent or anything, I would have told her that, and I think that this scene with her and Tom Sandoval fumbled it a little bit, and we'll probably get into that. But
Mhm.
I would have said, you need to come out and be like, I was under the spell of Sandoval. He came up to me when I was in a really vulnerable time after my engagement ended. He kind of manipulated me, which I think is probably a little bit true. And like, it was a toxic relationship, and I betrayed Ariana. And I think she should have come out kind of like she was also a victim in it to Tom Sandoval, but
Mhm.
she fumbled so hard by being in that scene, like giddy laughing with him with their Coors Light and the whatever light they have on in the back. Yeah.
You know what? I do want to get into that because that scene to me was weird. And like, like you said in the confessional, she said she wanted to know what it was like to be intimate with someone she loved. I'm like, girl, you were with a man for 5 years, engaged in everything. You don't know what that's like. Are you sure? That was odd to me. And then her behavior and Tom's behavior in the scene as well. Like they just came across. Okay, and this might be sound harsh, but do you ever have this where you see someone and it's not like on first sight, it's after seeing the way they treat the people around them that they're supposed to be close to and stuff, and you go, your soul is so ugly that all I see is just pure ugliness. Like to me, this scene, I looked at these people, I'm like, wow, these used to be people that like were considered beautiful, this, that, and the other. Like I just cannot get over how ugly these people are, just because I'm looking at them from the perspective of what they've done to the people around them. In Tom's case, it's not just what he did to Ariana, but what he did to Kristen, what he's done to Schwartz, what he's done to like his employees. And then from Raquel's perspective, what it is that she's done to Ariana. Like, it's just, I could not get over it. They just, to me, they look like gargoyles or something like that. Completely different people, no remorse.
Yeah. Well, and at no point, I could be wrong. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm
no.
I'm so excited talking to you. Like, I love talking to you because you're so good at this stuff. But like, at no point did she say, "How was Ariana? How was your conversation with her?
Great
Like,
question.
how is she
Yeah.
doing?" Tom Schwartz, I don't think ever asked that either. The fact that neither of them were like, "Hey, we really hurt Ariana." Like, she didn't even think to ask how Ariana was doing, which was so like telling to me. Also, the way that he was like, "Can we dim the lights?" Like, I'm like, "Oh, are you like a troll coming out of like a hole? Like, what do you mean dim the lights?" Like, he's just, I think he's just so aware of the optics and like how things are looking. And then also another funny thing to me that I mentioned on a TikTok was like, I have to laugh to keep him like screaming. The way that he was sitting on her lap on the couch as if it was like they were in a mall, and like, when like kids go to see Santa and they like sit on Santa's lap, he was like sitting on her lap practically, and he was like crisscross. Someone said that maybe he was doing that to appear taller than her, but it was so fun. It looked like she was like comforting an overgrown toddler. It was so bizarre to see. And then yeah, and then them like chasing shots with Coors Light. I'm like, did Coors Light like sponsor this season? It's so bizarre.
I had that thought as well, because when they go to Katie's house, Schwartz is like, "Can I have a Coke or something?" And then he opens a fridge and he comes out with a Coors Light as well. I'm like, no, this has never happened where like in the scene you're seeing this, no. Coors Light sponsored the episode. I used to do that when I was working in marketing. We would get our products into shows and movies and stuff like that. So to me, that really jumped out as well.
Well, yeah, and I've been on sets where someone could be drinking like I could be using like this lotion or whatever, and they will have to put tape on the thing that says like Bath and Body Works, because they're like, Bath and Body Works didn't pay us for this ad, so we're covering that up. So like the fact that they mentioned Coors Light, and I'm binging the show right now. They never mention the name of the alcohol that much. Like they'll say, "I want tequila," or "I want Vanderpump wine," is like the rosé, whatever, the number one thing they'll sometimes say. But like they would physically say Coors Light so often that I'm like, there has to be some budget. Like, what the heck, or why are they so obsessed with that? But them like chasing a shot with Coors Light in this like dimly lit kitchen, to me, I think was symbolic of their relationship. I think every relationship Sandoval has, and maybe this is another conversation about like alcohol consumption on this show, but he can't even have like a quick heart-to-heart convo without having to like consume alcohol. And Ariana even said he couldn't even go 5 days without drinking to get his sperm tested. Like the fact that he has to have all this like alcohol around him, to me, is a little concerning. And I thought that scene was reminiscent of that as well.
Yeah. And, speaking of reminiscent, Tom Schwartz had the same problem, because his sperm, when he and Katie were going in to figure out why they were not able to get pregnant, they were saying that his sperm was like deformed. He needed to kind of cut back on the alcohol, live a healthier lifestyle, drugs as well. And he couldn't do that. Like, I think the night when they get home, he's already cracking open like a cool one or something to like drink. I was like, dude, there definitely is something. And when Ariana, I think it was the episode just before this, she talked about wanting quality time with Tom Sandoval. To her, that is like going on walks or doing this. To him, it's doing drugs.
Yeah. Yeah, when he said that, he was like taking shrooms. I'm like, oh my gosh. Also,
Mhm.
someone said in the, I love that this has comments. This is so cool. Someone did mention that they felt like Raquel had more power than yeah, okay, D said like I always thought she was a snake, maybe she manipulated him. I
Yeah.
do have to say in that scene where they're in her apartment together, the way that
Find it.
they
Mhm.
were communicating did make me think for a moment that maybe she had more power than I thought. I thought that she was just like kind of naive and blindsided by Tom Sandoval, but it almost seemed like and maybe this was Sandoval like being a manipulator. It almost looked like he was looking to her for answers, whereas I thought how the scene would go is that she would be looking to him for answers on how to proceed. But he almost seemed like the dog with a tail between his legs and the like looking to its owner, who was Raquel, being like, "What do we do?" Also, some people mentioned in my TikTok the way
Yeah.
that Graham, Raquel's dog, was excited to see Tom
Mhm.
means that he has stayed there often. And when
Mhm.
Ariana and him had that breakup scene in the apartment, I noticed their dog that they share together never left Ariana's side, even when he
Yeah.
walked in the kitchen and into the room. The dog never greeted Tom Sandoval. And I feel
10
like
years.
dogs just know. Like I feel like the
Yeah.
dog was like there for Ariana, was protecting
Mhm.
her. Just had to throw that in. I'm ADHD going all over the place.
No, absolutely. And you know what? I feel like if that is the case, I'm thinking back to the scene because, with Tom Sandoval trying to look like Raquel was controlling him, I wonder if that is kind of intentional. He's got like a
Yes.
decade on her. He's a super like uh, kind of evil person and manipulative person. He never wants to take responsibility for cheating. So that could be intentional on his part. I do remember a part though where like he's like, "Oh, your family probably hates me." And then she asked him the same question, like, "Oh, like your family probably hates me." And then he gives her like a look, like, "We're not going to talk about my family." Do you remember that? She's like, "Or
Yes.
do you not want to?" And they slide by it. I felt like there was still kind of him up there.
Yes. Which
Yeah.
makes me think that they probably had some sort of conversation before filming, like, okay, what are the talking points we're gonna hit?
Hmm.
And I think that in that moment, it felt like Raquel was trying to show the cameras how genuine their relationship was and that they loved each other. Even like the body language of him leaning against the counter and she starts on the wall, and then she, throughout that scene, inches closer to him until her
Yeah.
forehead is literally on his forehead. I mean, they're also in a studio apartment. I live in a studio. Like, there's
Yeah.
not a lot of room. So, but like the way that their foreheads ended up on each other and she was the one who initiated that, I
Yeah.
felt like that scene was symbolic to me overanalyzing. That's like the core of who I am, but of her like trying to show the cameras how close they were, whereas he was trying to do damage control and show the cameras like, oh, like, maybe Raquel was the one who was like the manipulator all along. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you're right that he was a little smart, and like I think he was trying to like maybe lead Raquel to like lead the convo so then
Yeah.
he could go back later and be like, she blinded me kind of thing.
Uh-huh. And then him being like, and she just, as she's coming closer or whatever, like he's like, "I can't kiss you on camera." Like and I do believe she's the one who wanted to like kiss and seal their like kind of relationship on the
Yes.
show, you know. What was that
Yes.
you were gonna say?
When he was like, when he had a slip up a 40 and slip and said Ariana's name, and
And she
then
smiled so hard, by the way.
which, okay, you know what that made me think? What if this entire time Raquel wanted to be Ariana? Like she was with James. They saw that Tom and Ariana were the popular couple on the show. Ariana has always been one of the most popular cast members, had a successful book, is launching a restaurant. And what if Raquel this entire time wanted to be Ariana? And like her getting with Tom Sandoval was the closest thing she would get to like becoming Ariana.
Oof.
And so him slipping up and saying that was her being like, I've made it. Like, I've
Yeah.
made it. And also when he goes, they love you. And she goes, I love you too. And he goes, I said they love
They
you,
love.
but I
Yeah.
do love you. That's like the conversation reminded me of like when you're in high school and you have a crush on like a senior guy and he has to come over and talk to you for like an ASB survey. Like he doesn't actually want to talk to you. And in your head, you're like, okay, we're going to ride off in the sunset. He's obsessed. But like to him, it was like, okay, that was a weird freshman. Now I have to go survey the next person. That was how their combo seemed.
Exactly. I just don't see it for them. Like to me, I don't see the love. It felt forced. And something that stuck out to me in that scene, I hate when people touch my face. Don't touch my face. Your hands touch everything. It's just so icky to me. And he kept like petting her face. And I just remember being so irritated by that. It felt like he was doing that to my face and I was going to freak out. But,
Yeah.
about Ariana's ex-boyfriend, James. So James actually sheds a tear over this affair, but he claims that he's crying because of his lost friendship with Tom Sandoval and the way that Tom Sandoval threw it away. What do you think? Do you buy it? In my opinion, I think he's more hurt about Raquel doing that to him. Of course, he's hurt about Sandoval, but I think it's more Raquel. And also, I think just like Ariana, he got his karma because he was friends with Tom Sandoval when he started screwing Tom Sandoval's ex. So seriously, you guys, treat people well, because let Vanderpump Rules be an example to you that what you do what you put out there will come back to you. Like, it comes back the exact same way each time.
Always. And I think that there was also a moment where I thought this as well with Raquel, but at the end of the day, I feel like Raquel and James Kennedy are just still like jilted lovers. And even when Raquel in her confessional goes, I always wanted to know what it was like to be with someone you actually loved.
Yeah.
That was more of a dig at James Kennedy than a compliment to Tom Sandoval. And then with James Kennedy crying, yes, I do think that he was more hurt about Raquel, but I think that also speaks to like the point we made earlier about like men, at least publicly or whatever, like they regard their male friendships higher than their own romantic relationships with female partners at times. Like male friendships are something they seem like, you know, the fact that he was more upset about that friendship, I was like, but I do think in deep down inside, both Raquel and James Kennedy are still hurting over this relationship, which I think we see with Allie and the way that she rolls her eyes when he brings up Raquel, which makes me think he brings her up even more off camera, that she's like, enough. So yeah.
Absolutely. You know, I want to ask you and everybody in the chat as well, what is Raquel's villain origin story? We know that Tom Sandoval is just a bad person, just a bad boyfriend, but Raquel had a lot of us fooled. And I want to know what would drive her to do something this like evil to her best friend. Like, this season, it has seemed as though being a pageant girl is the only thing that has had her pretending to have some kind of code of ethics. And now that like she's aged out of it, like never winning, you know, a proper crown, she's like, all hell is breaking loose. Or maybe James replacing her and rubbing it in her face. I don't know what it is, but I feel like it's a mixture of the two.
Someone on Reddit was like, maybe Raquel's villain origin story was when no one showed up to her puppy party in like season 5 or whatever. It was like a talking point at the reunion even. I don't know what Raquel's villain origin story is. I think she just is like unaware of how she was hurting people. And I mean, maybe one day we'll find out about her villain origin story, but to me, she's scary because, like, for me, again, Tom Sandoval and Jax, their characters, and even Stassi, they're very easy to read and in some ways predictable. Like, you know what their ill intentions are. You know, like, Jax will tell you from a mile away, but Raquel and even Schwartz are scary to me because you don't really know what they're thinking or what their intentions are or what their next move is. And like the fact that we don't even know why Raquel did this in her villain origin story, like to me, that's scary. Like I think Sandoval, it's easy. He felt like he was washed up. He said it. He wants attention. Whatever's going to get him the most attention, he's going to do. You can read him like a book. Raquel, it's so confusing to me. And I explained it in one of my TikToks, but Raquel's like water. Like you can see water, you can feel it, but like you go to hold on to it and it like falls out of your hand. I think that's how Raquel feels. Like we think we understand her one season and then it slips away.
Oh my God, that is such an interesting analogy, because my analogies of her are honestly, I'm going to have to say like a little bit mean, because to me, I'm like, I think there's nothing up there. I think that like there's just like a bouncing ping pong ball or something just rolling around in there, minding its own business. Like, right? Like she smiles through all of this. Everybody else, even Sandoval, he's like putting on that pout. He's dry heaving. He's crying with no tears. He's fighting for his life here because he wants to kind of like dull some of the blowback against him. He's got a business and all of this. And Raquel, like she is just so unbothered. And I don't think it's because she's evil. I think it's because she's not smart enough to know that she needs to have at least a little bit of remorse, like pretending to shine through somewhere. You know, like there's something creepy about her for that reason.
Yeah, I think that she's like I totally agree in that like maybe there's and I know we talked about this on my Love is Blind podcast like and so like obviously we can't diagnose and I would never like throw terms out there but maybe there is something going on. But like even that though which is why it's even more sinister to me like even people that do maybe have something neurotypical going on, they still understand empathy and like right from
Mhm,
wrong. And so I think there's something even more deep rooted on top of that, where it's like, yes, there's some like dot there, she's not working with a full deck of cards, as they say, but
mhm.
like there's also just like something evil going on that like she doesn't have empathy. And
Yeah.
because even people that maybe don't understand everything happening like they still know right from wrong and she didn't or she did and just didn't care which yeah that episode that scene was so cold for me like I felt like she could have a redemption arc until that scene last night and I was like oh it's not she's not coming back from this.
Absolutely not. And I do want to get back to just to wrap up this scene here. Tom Sandoval being shady and always trying to make Ariana out to be the bad guy or anyone else out to be the bad guy. So we know that Sheena had shoved Raquel. Sheena wears really long nails, so she couldn't have made a fist. So maybe it was like, a scratch or something like that. We see it on Raquel's eyebrows. And did you notice how Tom Sandoval really wanted to bring this up to throw Sheena under the bus and then like the punching versus the pushing versus the scratching? What was that all about?
Yes, I think he was again baiting her to get a storyline for them to be the victims and
Yeah.
to me this was an example of essentially where and they had mentioned this on like podcasts and stuff and like so this is just my opinion it's subject to change like all opinions but in this scene I did feel that it really seemed confirmation that Raquel had abused the judicial system in getting that restraining order because she was giggling and like almost proud of the scar like wearing
Mhm.
it like a medal and
Yep.
anyone who's ever had to go through a judicial system to get any sort of protection from someone. It's not funny. It's not a joke. It's not something they giggle about to their good Judies. Like it is serious.
Yeah.
And it's anything, if anything, it's something they avoid talking about because it's deeply personal. And so for her to kind of gloat about it, I was like, oh, she was never afraid of Sheena ever. Like the
Mhm.
fact that she was, and I think Tom, and when they said later that Tom wanted to refilm that scene, that was probably another mark that was missed where he was like fuck like Raquel he's probably like Raquel like you're supposed to like cry like
Something.
he has like a
Yeah.
cue card like on the other side of the camera he's like okay now cry and she missed it like
Mhm.
yeah so I thought that to me was also sinister and that it really to me confirmed that she had abused the judicial system where maybe her resources took place of someone who actually needed to get a TRO and needed protection and her case took precedent over that because she's a public figure and I'm like oh like how sinister, like how dark. It was a really
Yeah.
dark scene to me.
But that's the thing with her that's so hard, and it goes back to your water analogy. Was that proof that like she abused the system, or is that just more proof that there's something wrong with her ability to emote the way that people would normally expect for someone to emote? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I have a hard time because again, like she's just always behaving so inappropriately, just smiling and laughing like nothing's going on. Like, it's really hard to tell.
Yes. And as Lauren says in the chat too, like the we said earlier, she never mentioned Ariana. Like to me,
Ever.
that was so telling that, and I think with Schwartz as well, they were never like, oh, hey, how was your combo with Ariana? Like, even if they were asking just to pry, that would have been better than just not even bringing it up. It was like they knew
Mhm.
that she'd be hurt and they just didn't care versus being
I
like, oh,
agree.
how's she handling it? Like, yeah, it's so dark.
I agree. And speaking of Ariana, she goes ahead and breaks the news to her friends. She has her guy friends next to her, and then Sheena and Katie come in and they kind of like hear about it all. Sheena was super emotional because she kind of like was there, right? Like it all broke down. Like at the Watch What Happens Live, she was shooting with Raquel. Like she's got like the shoving incident. So I see that as being a reason why she was so emotional. And I do think she's just in general a more emotional person than a lot of the other girls. Um, and so that was interesting. But like again, like even like all of Sheena's tears did not push Ariana to cry. The only person she really broke down in front of was Lisa Vanderpump. And I wonder if that's like a maternal thing, like this is a surrogate mom for her or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I think I really empathize. Like, I'm very lucky in that I live in LA. My family's from LA, like generationally. I just have a lot of support here. And I always feel for so many people who move here without family around them. And I think this cast seems to be that way in a lot of ways too. And like Ariana, I don't know if she has, I mean, I know she had just seen her family in Florida when her grandma died. And so she probably in a lot of ways has to have that rough exterior because she doesn't have that mom. And then when she saw that maternal figure, which was LVP, she finally could kind of break down. Very emotionally intelligent. Even the fact that she could articulate that she was leaning into anger to not cry was
Mhm.
fascinating to me. Like a lot of people would just subconsciously be angry and lash out and not understand why. And she did bring this up in Watch What Happens Live. And I do agree with her. She was like, I think LVP was a little too nice to Tom Sandoval when he came over. And I was like, exactly. Like sometimes I think LVP is a little sneaky.
Mhm.
And she's like if LVP is a maternal figure to Ariana, but if she truly was a maternal figure, she wouldn't be inviting Tom Sandoval over. Like again, a friend to all is a friend to none. Draw a line in the sand. I always say I respect someone more if they're friends with my enemy and stand by my enemy than if they're kind of a friend to me and kind of a friend to my enemy. At least I know
Mhm.
where you stand and I can measure that. But like LVP, to me, I thought it was just more of a bad look on LVP that she was so comforting to Ariana and then in the next scene invited Sandoval over. Whether she was cold to him or not, she invited him over. And I think that said a lot.
But do you think she's in a difficult place because she's in business with Tom Sandoval at the end of the day? So she does have to keep some kind of door open with him. Like,
But
I don't know.
she got into a business with him after she saw the way he did Kristen Dowdy. So I don't feel bad for her. Same with Schwartz. She got into
Mhm.
business with Schwartz after he poured multiple drinks on women.
Yeah.
LVP knew exactly who they were. If anything, she knows more than the audience does. And she continued to help them in business and align herself. She made a restaurant named after them. And like, yes, I'll still be a sellout for Tom Tom. I love that bar. Like, hopefully I'm not blacklisted because I said I hate Schwartz. But like, it's a good bar. But, she literally named it Tom Tom.
Yeah.
Entertainment industry 101, like, 101 is if you want to launch a business using a popular figure and you want it to like continue even after they're gone, don't put their name on it. It's why Selena Gomez made Rare Beauty and Rihanna made Fenty. Like you want to create a business that outlives you even if you decide to no longer be in the public eye. They literally name a bar Tom and Tom and Schwartz and Sandy's, and
Yeah.
LVP supported both of them. I know she's financially tied to Tom Tom more, but I just don't feel bad. I'm like, look, you knew exactly who Sandoval was when you got in business with him. Cry me a river. Like, he's awful.
Mhm.
Like, you knew that. Like, that's how I feel.
I agree. And we're going to circle back to that when we get into the preview for the reunion. But for everybody who's just joining us, welcome. We are recapping the finale episode of Vanderpump Rules season 10 with Coco Mocoe. Coco Mocoe is a media analyst, social media analyst, and she also has a wonderful podcast, a very popular podcast called Ahead of the Curve that's available both on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever you listen to your podcast. So she analyzes the heck out of Vanderpump Rules. I'm talking zodiac signs. Like, go check out her TikTok videos on all of
Yes.
that. Like, everything, scene by scene, line by line. She has all the details. I saw a comment earlier from Alana about Sheena always crying, right? And I do want to get into that because there are some people online who feel like Sheena was trying to make it about herself. Because if you watch VPR from the early days, Sheena has always had a habit of doing that. Do you think it's the case in this episode?
100%. Again, and I will also say this, if I ever have a pop culture museum, that white bucket hat needs to be like preserved in a case, no
Why
fingerprints with
the bucket
24/7
hat?
security. Like that's what I'm saying. Like why? Like why was that the mood? Like, like they're going through maybe because there was paparazzi, but like the fact that she put on an all white ensemble and a
Yeah.
white bucket hat, again, not even an Emmy winning like costume designer team would put a character in a white bucket hat to have that combo. But yes, I do think that like to me, Sheena's fascinating. And I think she's obviously just a mirror of the entire show. And that part of what makes it so interesting is there's never a hero or villain. Every season it changes and you never know who you're rooting for. But like Sheena to me has always on paper been the main character, and like even this season it was her wedding, and yet she's so close yet so far from ever being the main character. Like she's just like always like in proximity to it but wants to be the main character and never is. And I think this season again was such an example of that, especially with like the, you know, it was her wedding, and I this was like when um I hated this trope that would happen in Vanderpump Rules in around the middle seasons where like whoever was having a wedding that season, they were the main character and like
Yes.
everyone had to kiss their butt. I was like, oh my God, we're done. This is annoying. And I think Sheena thought that would happen again this season with her second wedding, even with like kind of like not wanting Katie there, whatever happened there. But like to me, in so many ways, Sheena dropped the ball this season. And I'm sure she'll win me over again, but like I think that what a lot of people forget too, and whether you love or hate Katie, Katie was just as much a victim this season as Ariana. And
Absolutely.
right,
Yeah.
everyone was so quick to scapegoat her and throw her under the bus, and
Mhm.
Sheena didn't care that it was hurting Katie that Schwartz was with Raquel, and whether it was like fake or not. And Sheena, again, like it really rubbed me the wrong way. The way that like Allie, this new cast member who's probably intimidated by everyone, like she's new, she still held her own, and she went to Sheena to raise the alarm bell that Sandoval and Raquel were spotted at the Abbey, a quote that's going to go down in history in Vanderpump Rules lingo. And knowing Allie did this, knowing that it could potentially ostracize her from this new friend group. And Sheena threw her under the bus, was like, when I see Sandoval, I'm beelining for him and telling him that information, almost like threatening Allie, like, just so you know.
Yeah.
And I felt so bad for Allie, or when she's like, cut the nice girl act. I was like, Sheena, you could have been the hero this season. You could have taken that information, which sometimes makes me wonder if Sheena knew something and isn't letting on, because the way she shut that rumor down and the way
Mhm.
that she like overreacted to it, I was like, that's kind of weird. But like, that's just me starting a rumor. It's probably not true. But also, yeah, I think that Sheena only relates to storylines if she considers those people her best friend. And you'll hear
Everyone's
that.
her best friend though,
Oh
except
my
Katie.
God. Because everyone's her best friend except Katie. And like I think that she genuinely will mentally check out of storylines unless she's like, this is my, as she says, best friend.
Yeah.
And or one of my favorite quotes from her was a full-blown love affair. I've been saying
Yeah.
that, it's on repeat. The way she said it, iconic. But yeah, I think that she knows that she wasn't the main character this season, even though it was her wedding. And so the closest she was going to get to that was being Tom and Ariana's best friend. And yeah, and like I don't know, I think she just dropped the ball so many times this season that I'm like, I don't feel bad for you. Like you could have raised the alarm bell to Ariana. I did think her scene with Sandoval at the end was the most authentic she'd ever been on the entire show. Like I
Mhm.
thought she made great points, but
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. I just, maybe I'm being critical of Sheena, but I just think that like she
Yeah.
really threw Katie under the bus, and
Yeah.
I'm not even the biggest Katie fan, but like I felt really bad for Katie, and I don't think no one's like giving her a Dancing with the Stars contract, and like, you know, but and I think she deserves it in some ways too.
Yeah, like VPR is here because of Sheena and Brandy Glanville, I feel like. But here's the thing, Sheena at the very beginning, she used to warn Ariana about Tom Sandoval. He's a great liar. He's a cheater. He cheated
Yeah.
on Kristen with you. The Miami girl thing is real. And remember, Ariana was at the height of her pick me girl era back then. She'd be like, no, there's no way. He didn't have time to bang her. I was on the phone with him and I didn't hear any like,
She's like, I'm
noises.
cooler than you, I'm hotter than you, I'm
I'm prettier
smarter
than
than
you.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, like she was, honestly, Ariana, she comes across as a cool girl, but like when it comes to her man, like you cannot tell her anything. And so to me, like maybe Sheena's like, listen, let her get cheated on in peace. Like she knows what kind of man she's with. And so but her behavior towards Katie this season has been so gross, right? Like with the Raquel stuff. But not only that, but Ariana's behavior as well towards Katie as a friend and as a business
Yes.
partner, like
Yes.
laughing about this, never sticking up for her. That was not cool either. Um,
Totally.
I want to ask you, and I wish I got a screenshot of this, but James Kennedy, he's always the comedic relief for the show, right? And so at a certain point, he calls Raquel on speakerphone, and he starts dragging her about this affair. How does it feel to lose all your friends for Tom's stinky 40-year-old like pee-pee or whatever? What did you think about that conversation? Ali was there, Katie was there, and Lala was there.
Yes. Okay, so I for me the number one thing that I couldn't get out of my head was more from a production standpoint, which was like California is a two-party consent law. So if you are going to record a phone call or just a conversation, you have to tell the other person.
Mhm.
And so I was like, they made it seem like he called her out of the blue. There had to have been a conversation where it's like producers are here filming, just so you know, or like this call's being recorded. I'm sure Raquel didn't know other people like
Yeah.
Katie and them were in the room. But so that was interesting to me. I'm like, how did they get Raquel on the phone? But also, yes, I think James Kennedy, to me, like his character, the entire show has always been like, he almost feels like the younger brother that your
Yeah.
mom's like, you have to bring him to the mall if you're going to go with your friends. Like he always kind of felt like that. And I do think James Kennedy is flawed in a lot of ways, but still redeemable and is the comedic relief 100%. And I also think that he is a freaking hustler. And I don't think people realize like he works so hard. I think back, I was just doing a rewatch, I think of season 2 where, or season 3, where Schwartz had a panic attack after LVP gave him a job as a bartender and he leaves the bar and like ghosts everyone. And James Kennedy got fired and he's in the alley begging Peter for his job back. He's like, I will bus, I'll do anything to just work. And
Mhm.
Katie was like, it's so weird seeing James Kennedy, this young 21-year-old, begging to work, and Schwartz is still at home sitting on the couch. So, like, I think in a lot of ways, James Kennedy is very redeemable to me. And he's just a hustler. And I think I respect that about him in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I love the hustle, but it also makes me sad as well because he's hustling because he's not only supporting himself, like he's supporting his girlfriends always, his mom, his dad, and his parents' kids as well. He's got a lot of people relying on him financially, and I think that that's a lot to kind of carry on your shoulders as a young person. Um, Speaking of Schwartz,
Yeah.
how did you feel about his conversation with Katie? So Katie's trying to find out when he knew about the affair, and he starts off with a lie. I've only known for a couple of weeks or something like that. And so she just keeps quote unquote badgering him. I feel like there's a better way to describe that, but I can't think of it until she gets the real response, which is that he's known since the summer at the very least. Why would he lie? Do you think that Tom Sandoval told him like, a frame to kind of like stick to? What was the deal there, do you think?
Yeah, I think Schwartz is going back and forth between his loyalty to Sandoval and I think for the first time reckoning that maybe his loyalty to Sandoval is going to be his downfall. And so
Mhm.
he's like teetering. And I think in those conversations with Katie, we see that like on full display, where I think he has these moments where he's almost like, if I just come clean right now, I can rid my hands of Tom Sandoval. And then he gets so close, but then he pulls back. And I think we saw that in the reunion preview where he was like, I knew since late August. And Sandoval's like, dude, August. Like, oh my God, dipped out. But yeah, I think Schwartz is his ability to be Switzerland was also his downfall. Like, let it be a
Yeah.
cautionary tale. A friend to all is a friend to none.
Mhm.
And yeah, he would never be this loyal to Katie the way if Katie
Ever.
ever pulled something off like this with what Sandoval has done, he would clean his hands of her months ago. But he's just so
Mhm.
loyal to Sandoval. And I think we see him going between two, like it's almost like he was at a fork in the road in that conversation with Katie, and he knew it could go one of two ways. And or in the conversation where Katie was telling Ariana that Schwartz said to her, trust me, Raquel's not here for me. And I think that was in
Yeah.
October at BravoCon.
Mhm.
And so I think Schwartz kind of wanted it to get out too, but like he didn't
Yeah.
want to be the one to spill the beans.
And that's why I feel like he did that on purpose at the reunion, saying the August thing. Like he knows not to say August, but he did it on purpose. I think he's slowly starting to try to
Distance
um,
himself.
distance himself and stir up discord between himself and Tom Sandoval, which I do think is probably the best thing he can do for himself right now because the two of them have finally been unmasked. Like for years, they've been able to run around like menacing the women on this show and like still being coddled and whatnot. But this year, they're not getting that. Remember, earlier on in the season, Tom Schwartz was playing his like, lost puppy dog act after he would do nasty things. He would insult Katie, then ask her to shave his armpits. He would insult Lala, then say, come back. I didn't mean that. You're a good mom, right? And then now what happens? If it turns out that he was in on this lie with Ariana, and so he comes at the end while she's with all of the girls, and he does his little lost puppy dog act. And so Ari, she's like, cut the crap. None of these girls want to talk to you. Why don't we just talk privately? I am so happy he's getting that reaction finally.
And you know what kills him? Because this was his motive all along. It kills him when Ariana goes, we are not friends anymore. Because Schwartz's entire identity is aligned with how many friends he has. Even when Katie says it in the reunion, like, you're a serial killer's wet dream. Like, he will get into anyone's car. Like, he'll go to anyone's picnic. Like, he is just he just is obsessed with being friends with everyone. And again, that often is the worst friend of all. And I also have to note on this scene where they're at the rooftop bar, and like I know we said earlier, Lala and the send it to Daryl merch, but I think that it was so, again, this is me overanalyzing. All of the women are in black, and it could have been planned, but someone said in an interview they all said they did not plan to all wear black, but they all show up in black. They're kind of like, as they say, they're mourning. And then Ariana shows up in this like gold dress that's bedazzled. It almost, to me, felt like a phoenix rising from the ashes. And I thought it was really fascinating in that the way that I thought this scene would go is that Ariana would be broken and she would be looking to the other women to lead her, and she would be in all black. Like, she would be in the send it to Daryl merch, like hair in a bun, like dry shampoo. And then she would be looking to answers. But it was actually the opposite. The women were turning to Ariana to lead them into the next chapter. And I thought that was so symbolic. And she's in this, like, it really felt like a phoenix rising from the ashes. She's in, this is why I'm in marketing. I'm like, let me just like put a name on it and brand it. But it really was this like symbolic moment. And she's sitting at the head of the table. And then her kind of scorching Schwartz, I think, was that last, like, getting rid of the ashes. And yeah, I mean, Schwartz just wanted to make it about him. Like, he never even really asked Ariana how she was doing. And when they show the text as well, like at one point he apologizes because I think he knew it would be bad optics if he didn't. But he was never like, at no point in the conversation was he just quiet and was like, how are you? Like, how are you?
No.
He never asked her that. He was like, our business is failing. Like, I'm going through a lot. Who cares? You went into business with him knowing what he's done to other women and you didn't care. So like you're laying in the bed that you made or didn't make, I guess. But yeah.
1,000%. I felt like it was the perfect ending. To me, it felt like both of those guys who've gotten away with it for so long were finally unmasked, and like the charm wore off, and now they don't know what to do. They're like, exposed, and they just feel horrible about it. And it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of move forward from this. Like you said, there is a possibility that perhaps Tom Sandoval doesn't return because of the way they kind of wrapped up his storyline. I wonder what's next for Schwartz. I wonder what's next for Raquel. I don't personally think that Sandoval and Schwartz can afford to walk away from the show. They are mortgaged up the wazoo, right? They owe their family money. So it's going to be interesting. Like, I still do believe that they set us up for a return of Kristen, a return of Jax, a return of Brittany. I don't think Stassi would accept to come back, but I do think that those other people would. And it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. I do want to ask you and everyone in the chat as well, how you guys feel about Ariana's sort of ultimatums to everybody. She said to Schwartz clearly, I will not have mutual friends with Tom Sandoval, so you are no longer a friend of mine. But in the preview for the reunion, you guys, she says the same thing. It seems, right? It might have been chopped and screwed to Lisa Vanderpump. Like I said, Lisa's in business with the Toms, and she's the boss of this whole operation. Will she be subjected to an ultimatum?
Yes. Well, and she was on Watch What Happens Live last night, and Ariana, because Andy asked that exact question, and she was like, well, like she was like, it's a different situation with LVP. I think they know that LVP pulls a lot of strings, but I would love if she gave that ultimatum because I think someone needs to do it, even to LVP. And like when I mentioned LVP earlier, there were some great comments that were like kind of countering me and they were like, leave LVP out of it. My thing is, LVP wanted to be in the scene. They didn't have to go. She did not have to be in this episode. She invited them to her house and she filmed a scene with them. She inserted herself into the storyline. She could have stayed out of it and this still would have been a great episode. So I'm like, LVP inserted herself into the episode, into the scene, into the storyline. She's going to have to answer for that. And I don't know. I do think, I think that it will be hard because LVP is in business with them. I mean, they're only like 5% of TomTom or whatever, but yeah, I don't know. It'll be interesting. I think
Mhm.
LVP, this is probably a reckoning for her as well because she's smart. She's a Virgo. She understands optics. I think she's probably feeling the heat from this episode and is like, oh, I was too loyal to the Toms in a way that I never was to the other women on the cast, except maybe Sheena at times.
Yeah, 1,000%. And speaking of Sheena, so in her scene with Tom Sandoval, the final scene, I don't know if I'm misremembering. I have to go back and watch the divorce episode, but I felt as though she cried more for Tom Sandoval than she cried for the ending of her marriage. Am I off base with
Yes.
that?
That you make such a great point. Like when are you referring to when she asked for Shay for a divorce, like on camera? Because
Yeah.
that to me was always kind of crazy. Because Shay was never really a public figure. I don't think he ever really wanted to be a huge part of the show. And he was okay with like getting married on camera. I think he knew it was something Sheena needed to do. But like her asking for Shay for a divorce on camera was really dark, I think, because you
Mhm.
could tell Shay was not in a good place,
This is an
needed help.
addict. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
possible.
yeah, sometimes I wonder like when people are dealing with clearly substance and alcohol abuse issues, I'm like, at what point like should cameras be like, okay, we just need to not film this. Like this is just
Mhm.
out of our control at this point. But anyways, I'm going on a tangent. Yeah, I think it was fascinating that she was so affected by it. I think that this is my analysis of Sheena over the seasons because I'm watching the first few seasons again, and so it's fresh on my mind. A lot of her story and her identity revolves around her wanting to be a part of the friend group and always being ostracized, especially
Mhm.
when we had the witches of WeHo. So Stassi, Katie, and Kristen, they
Yeah.
always ostracized Sheena. She was never a part of the friend group. And she even mentions that in that last scene where she says, we were on a red carpet for the show and
Mhm.
no one would do photos with me. And Sandoval put his arm around me and brought me into the photo. And so again, it was symbolic of she always wanted to be a part of the cool girl friend group. I think everyone can relate to that to some extent. And this season and the last season, Sheena was finally a part of the cool friend group. She was finally one of the cool girls. Her and Ariana were taking over the world. She was with Lala. They got homes in Palm Springs near each other. Like Sheena, I think in her mind had finally made it. I think she revered friendships even higher than her relationships, but like in a positive way. Like I know we were
Mhm.
saying earlier, like you want to watch out for those girlfriends that put men above you. I will
Mhm.
say, I think Sheena, even though in the beginning season she said she was a guy's girl, but like I think Sheena really does revere her female friendships extremely highly. And she was finally a part of a great friend group. And Sandoval and Ariana breaking up threatened not only her friend group, but a core part of her identity now. And I
Ah,
think
yeah.
that could be why she was in denial about it and defended
Mhm.
them and said multiple times to Ali, those are my best friends. I would know if this was happening. Like, I think to her, and that was the only way she related to the storyline. I think she obviously felt empathy and awful for Ariana, but it was
Mhm.
very clear that to her, she was mourning a part of her identity in the way that she was like finally a part of a group, and her entire storyline every season revolved around her finally wanting to be a part of a friend group, and I think she felt that slip away.
Well, you know what? Like that only makes Tom Sandoval's final phone conversation with her all the more devastating, right? Because, like you're saying, she was always excluded. He's the one who physically brought her in to photos and stuff like that, and in the group. And now, in their final phone call, what does he tell her? We were never like real friends.
Yeah, and you know why he said that? Because he knows that's the one thing she cares about. Like Sandoval knows how to push your buttons. I think he, again, putting his arm around her at a red carpet in their first seasons, he knows how to read people, and he probably wanted to do as much damage as he could to Sheena, the way that he was doing to Ariana, which I think to Ariana he's going to do financially. And so him
Mhm.
saying to Sheena, "We were never actually friends," he knew that would hit a button that no one else could hit and nothing else could hit.
It's evil to say that, honestly, after 14 years of friendship, we were never actually friends. Like, that to me is like wild, to be able to say that to somebody.
Yeah, and Sheena is a pretty supportive friend. Like that's the one thing about her that I really do admire besides to Katie. I guess they were never friends, but like Sheena like rides for her friends. Like she will go to the depths with you. I feel like she's very supportive. Like whenever her friends are coming out with projects and stuff, like she's the first to post about it. And again, I think she just wants to be a part of a cool friend group. And like when
Mhm.
her friends are winning, she truly is one of those people who's like, if my friends are winning, I'm winning.
Yeah.
And I think that again, Tom Sandoval, he could have said, like whatever, you and Ariana, whatever. Like he knew that there were so many insults. You've been divorced. You aren't even a good relationship with Brock. He could have hit so many buttons, but
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
but he knew saying that we were never actually friends was going to hit her more than anything else.
So he's even more evil than we thought. It's not just the cheating, it's like the really insidious stuff that'll really get to the core of your psyche and who you are that he plays with. And that's kind of freaky, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And sorry, I want to ask you a question too. Sorry, I know like we're over, but I'm enjoying this. I don't have anything to do. So I'm
No
like,
worries.
I'm going
Me
to talk
too.
all day. But, anyways, you made a TikTok that's
Mhm.
on my For You page, and you were saying how this cast gets into new relationships very quickly.
Yes.
What are your,
Mhm.
because I have thoughts on that, but I want to hear like kind of you, what made you think that and where you stand with that.
You know what? Because I saw that Ariana was in a new relationship with that guy. And I'm like, girl, you just found out that your boyfriend of 10 years was cheating on you with your best friend. Like, how are you already up and running with a new guy? Because I talk about this, something similar happened to me, but on a smaller scale, much less years and much less of a friendship, with the other girl. And I was like down for the count for like years, you know what I mean? At least a year. So I could never, you know what I mean? And so just looking at that, I was like, but what about James? Like he got dumped by Raquel and everything, and immediately he's got a new girlfriend. That's the love of his life. Tom Sandoval, he and Katie, Kristen, they break up. He's immediately with Ariana. He and Ariana break up after 10 years. He's immediately with Raquel. Like it's just consistently like that. I know Jax used to be the same. They all monkey branch between people. And to me, it's just fascinating. I remember just putting it out like, this is really interesting to me. And I think it explains the nature of their relationships almost. It's that they don't really take the time to recheck in with themselves, see like how they've changed since that relationship. Because I feel like relationships change you a lot in your perspective and whatnot. Um, and what else they want. Like, do you want a different type of like, relationship or a person next time around? Like, it just feels like, man, like, don't you want to spend time with yourself? Like, I love spending time with myself personally. So it's just interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I think you're so right. I remember when I was younger, I used to be like almost jealous of people who could monkey branch because I'm like, dang, how do they find like that many people that like them? I'm like, how what are they doing? But no, okay, so I have a theory on this, and maybe this is
Yeah.
like the media expert in me
Thanks,
coming out.
Misty. Hmm.
I think that the cast knows that, especially for this show, a lot of their storylines and who's the main character that season centers around their proximity to a relationship. Like,
Yes.
and so I think for them, it's like they know that in order to be cast the next season, to be talked about, they like, for example, Schwartz being single and then like immediately trying to align with Raquel, the two of them trying to align, because they knew that in order for them to be a main character, they have to be in close proximity to another person. Like the show centers around relationships and people dating. And I
Yeah.
think that the cast knows that. And we saw that especially with a bunch of them getting married back to back to back, because they knew that whoever was getting married that season, the storyline would center around them. And so
Hmm.
I think them monkey branching from relationships too is also just like they've probably either subconsciously or consciously over the years are like, oh, if I'm single, like my, storyline, my literally my like amount of time that I'm in the episode each week is going
Mhm.
to be threatened. Like we saw that with Lala this season, who I think had a really great season, even though she wasn't in much of it. But like, yeah, she was dating, as she calls, the Dawn for a little bit. But
Yeah.
I think someone said that when they were filming, a lot of her storylines centered around her leaving Randall, but that like because of legal issues they couldn't talk about it.
Mhm.
But I think that Lala was really thriving in this like singleness and talked about it often. Even though she was like seeing the dawn, she was really single for the first time we had seen her since she joined the show. And yet at the same time, she didn't get enough airtime. And I think it's because they're like, well, your storyline isn't about a relationship, so we're going to cast you off to the side. I think it's the same reason we saw Katie bring in Satchel like midway through so that she could still have a storyline. So I don't
Mhm.
know. I really do think that like the cast knows that they have to be in a relationship in order to be interesting to the show. And I wish it wasn't like that. I think it'd be fascinating if we had a season where all the women were single and not in a relationship and figuring that out. But I don't know. That's my theory on it from like a media perspective.
I agree. But the thing is, I feel like relationships are so taxing because I remember like recently, most recently, like the breakup of a relationship that was so short. It was only like 3 months, but that was so devastating to me. So I'm looking at these people going through relationships of like 10 years, 5 years, engagements, freezing eggs for a person, and then they're on to the next. I'm like, oh my God. I feel bad for them that they have this kind of pressure on them. You know what I mean? Because that's a lot. And I feel like it can be traumatizing. So that's quite sad in that respect. And I do agree that, like, it does seem like that, not only on this show, but on reality and in general, that these things are pushed. In another show that I talk about that you watch sometimes, Teen Mom, these people, their expediting of relationships includes having babies with everybody. But here on Vanderpump Rules, it's moving in with everybody. Like they all just start moving in with people. I'm like, holy crap.
And then I think we're seeing that fall back on them now, and maybe they won't as much anymore, in that a couple of the cast members are now in financial issues because of it. Like,
Mhm.
there was a couple scenes, I think maybe early on in this season, where Katie and Tom were talking about having to sell the house. And I know Katie's mom was really like affected by that. And then also now Ariana and Tom, and Ariana even said on Watch What Happens Live last night that she wants to sell the house as soon as she can. And the fact that they haven't gotten it on the market yet makes me think that Tom again is holding the finances over her head. So it's
Mhm.
like, yes, having a baby is probably like the worst thing you can do to expedite a relationship.
Yeah.
And then another one is like getting finances involved is like after that. And
Mhm.
I think they're learning. I think that's why we see them all in these kind of like smaller apartments now this season, because they're probably like, crap, like we bought all of these like cookie cutter homes in Valley Village and
Yeah.
now we're all out a bunch of money. So yeah, that's
It's
my thought.
the regression, just like seeing them bounce back from the mansions to the small apartments. Like, yeah, it's not like the apartments that they had at first, but they're still in these like, apartments again. Like, I find that wild. I wonder what that feels like to go from a mansion back to an apartment. I do want to do a little bit. There's a couple of questions that I had saved here. So if you guys have any questions for Coco Moco or I, do feel free to leave them. Coco, about how much time do you have left? Just so I know how to time myself here.
Yeah, I have about 30 minutes. I have a meeting. It's 9:30 right now in LA. I have a meeting at 10, so I can keep
Okay.
going.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll do like 25 to give you some time, or 20. If you guys have any questions for Coco Moco, I definitely make sure to leave them. So, like I said, Coco Moco is a media analyst. And so she is all about the trends and whatnot and reality television. She really gets into it. I saw some questions earlier about zodiac signs and stuff like that. And I know she loves that. So I did favorite it just to make sure that we get into that sort of question. So let's dig in. I'm just going to head over to my start. So there was a comment from Sloopy. So Sloopy says that Schwartz is doing other shows. And I wanted to know if you felt like that was a strategy, more of an exit strategy from VPR potentially.
Yes, it was surprisingly kind of refreshing to hear that Schwartz, I think it's called Stars on Mars, and like Scott Disick is in it, Ronda Rousey,
Portia
and
Williams. Yeah.
yes. And I feel like it is him testing the waters to see if he can stand on his own. But I think the shadow of Sandoval will always loom over him. especially because they're tied up in restaurants now. But I mean,
Mhm.
you guys know I've said this multiple times. Schwartz is like my least favorite on the cast because I think he's scary and conniving. But I would enjoy seeing him outside of Sandoval to see if my opinion changes of him.
Okay. So let's see this. Krista says, so this one we went through with the scratched eyebrow. Would you say that Schwartz and Rachel are similar in some way?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think that Schwartz is smarter than Raquel and understands. I think that I think he mirrors Raquel because he sees how much she gets away with by acting dumb. But I think that Schwartz is very smart. I think that Schwartz is very manipulative. And I don't know that Raquel is smart or manipulative. I think she's just like reckless. What do you
Mhm.
think?
I would agree in that respect. They both play that lost kind of puppy role very, very well there. I do think that they're both not nice people at their core. I think that they're both kind of like people who are more so out for themselves than anything else. And I do find it interesting because on that show that we were just talking about, that Tom Schwartz is about to do, he's going to be teaming up with Portia Williams, who also plays that dumb lost puppy, but is secretly kind of evil and like plotting on people, and actually quite smart because she's launched all these businesses, all these shows and stuff. So that definitely is something that I find quite fascinating, like there between the trio. Now,
Yeah.
Sloopy's wondering, do you think that LVP would reboot the show with a younger cast in Vegas, perhaps? Oliver's in there, don't forget.
100%. And I honestly, okay, so what I think was going to happen is they knew the show was going to come to an end. I think this was going to be the last season. That's why we saw the episode before last night, which was supposed to be the finale. Lisa Vanderpump gives this very heartfelt speech, which felt like it was supposed to be a send off speech for the show. She said, "You're going to have to learn how to deal with your problems." And then I think it was going to be end scene. The show ends, everyone moves on. Um, and I think they were going to pick up filming in Vegas for a new series. I know they tried to test a Vegas shoot like a couple seasons ago where the cast went and like visited the opening. And I do think that you're right. I think Oliver was test shooting where they kind of like they'll insert new characters into shows to see how they do with the audience. I think Oliver was test shooting to see if he could lead a new show in Vegas because Garcelle is very loved in the Beverly Hills Housewives franchise. I love Garcelle. My boyfriend and I watch the Jamie Foxx show. So I'm just like loyal to her I will ride with her into anywhere. But I think it was interesting because Oliver didn't translate very well on camera. I thought that
No.
maybe it's because like when he was introduced in the Housewives show, he was a loving husband. And in this show, he was like making out with Raquel. Like, I was like, wait, who is
Mm,
this? It was like, is this the same Oliver? Like, what is going on here? So, but I do think they're testing a Vegas show. And I think it was going to replace Vanderpump Rules. It was probably going to be called like Vanderpump Vegas or something. But
ah,
now that this show had the highest ratings in all, I mean, I read an article that it broke streaming records on Peacock. So, yeah, this and
wow.
like Real Houses of New Jersey. But so I think that they're obviously going to now film a season 11 and maybe also try to launch Vanderpump Vegas, which we saw this happen with Summer Break. I think what's going to happen is next season they're going to have an episode. I think they tried to do this year, but like all the girls were like reeling through a breakup and Ariana
Mhm.
had to leave because of Charlotte's death. I think they're going to have the girls go to Vegas on a girls trip and hang out with the cast of Vanderpump Vegas, and then it's going to roll into that episode. We saw that happen with Summer Break, and now Summer Break is one of the most successful shows on Bravo.
Oh my goodness. And you know what's funny? I never even heard of Summer Break. I'm going to go look that up after this.
Oh, Summer House. Sorry, Summer
Oh,
House.
Summer House. Okay, that
I
I know.
Yes, it was like the episode where Stassi and them went to the Hamptons, and then I think his name's or one of the guys who was like a main cast on Summer House. He was trying to flirt with Stassi and said she looked like Steve Jobs because she
Oh,
was wearing like a white turtleneck bathing suit, which like again, pop culture museum. Who owns a white turtleneck bathing suit? Like turtleneck
so
and
weird.
bathing suit don't go together, but
Yeah.
Stassi put them together and it was
Uh-huh.
iconic.
See, Sassy,
So
she's normally chic, but that time she went a little bit too far in this chic direction. Like no one wants to throw in
yes.
a
And the
suit.
best part was like that scene was like in like a in-house jacuzzi. Like I don't know if you've
Mhm.
ever been to like kind of a janky hotel and it's like the pool is like indoors, like in like a converted garage. Like that was what
Oh,
that scene was just so iconic. Anyways, I'm
yeah.
tangent. I do think they're going to launch a Vanderpump Vegas. What do you think?
I could totally see that. Speaking of Garcelle and Oliver, I wanted to say this, and I will do a video about this, or maybe I'll clip this part of what I'm about to say and make it into a video. Um, Oliver, I think a big issue with him on the show and like why people are turned off by him. For me personally, I feel like he constantly plays like that fetishized, like young black guy on these shows, like on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. And I think we talked about this on your show.
Erica? Mhm.
Yeah, like Erica, like she likes an old white sugar daddy, right? Like decrepit. But now that like she's on the divorce from him, she's like, oh, let me see what I could like bang until my next kind of like, lick comes through. And so she was really heavily fetishizing Oliver, and he seemed to get off to that. And then you see the same with Lala. Lala, your type is rich, old, white men, okay? But then Oliver comes around, all of a sudden that's your type, LaDon's your type. It's like it does not compute. Randall does not look anything like these men. And then with Raquel, I don't know. I think her type is just like regular, like white guys. You know what I mean? But with the Oliver thing, she wants to be
Yeah.
thirsty. She wants to make Sandoval jealous. Like he's always playing that role. And Garcelle, she recently spoke out. She was saying that she doesn't like the way that Oliver was used on Vanderpump Rules. She feels like he was used or whatever.
Mhm.
I'm like, girl, you need to have a conversation with your son about being this like fetishization tool for like white women because it's not a good look, you know? What do you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, I do sympathize with a lot of reality stars, but I do think that when, like, they say, like, oh, the edit was bad, I'm like, they could only edit what you gave them. Like, you made out with Raquel in,
Mhm.
like, a random bar, like, on the strip. But also the fact that Lala and Raquel were, like, fighting over Oliver to me confirms that behind the scenes they were filming a Vanderpump Vegas and Oliver was going to be the main person. He's probably going to be the Jax of it or whatever.
Mhm.
And I think that I think that Raquel's type, you're right, is like kind of like to me feminine white guys. Nothing wrong with being feminine as a man, like but
Yeah.
very feminine. James Kennedy is that way and so is Tom Sandoval. And so Oliver was like a little bit like different to me in who she liked, and
Mhm.
same with Lala going for Randall. But again, I think that if they knew behind the scenes, probably had signed an NDA that Oliver was shooting Vanderpump Vegas and he was a main cast member, there is now
Oh.
extra leverage in aligning themselves with Oliver, especially
Mhm.
if they thought that Vanderpump Rules LA was going to end after this season. Because then, if they were aligned with Oliver, they could pick up filming in Vegas if they needed to be on a show. That's my conspiracy. Me starting a rumor, probably not true. That's the media mind of me going over their intentions of why they tried to align with him. Like they were fighting over him and he barely even came in the scene. So I'm like,
Yeah.
there was some conversation that happened prior to this that put Oliver on some sort of pedestal that they could monetize or benefit from aligning with him.
I like that. I love your theories, by the way. They are always so like on the ball. I'm like, we should write this down because they will come true. Mrs. D, she says she wants to know what I. So for my skin, guys, I use The Ordinary. Okay, glycolic acid toner, retinol, you name it. I am using it. I am obsessed with them, and thank you. Lauren says, do you ever think Lala and James would be compatible together now?
Also, I have to add, yes, you look beautiful. I love like the red lip with the dainty necklace. Gorgeous. But
Yeah, my-
yes, yeah, you know what? It's funny. I think that Lala and James do seem very, very compatible to me. Um, but I think that Lala's it seems at me maybe not now anymore. Maybe she's making a lot of money off of like her send it to Daryl merch. But no, actually, I don't mean to I really do think Lala is a smart businesswoman. Again, she's a Virgo, but she just signed to CAA. And anyone who works in entertainment, CAA is one of the top agencies. They rep the Kardashians, like they rep Addison Rae. And when she signed with them, she got a Netflix movie. CAA is one of the top agencies and they just picked up Lala. So I think she's going to be fine financially. But I was going to say, I think that at least in the past, Lala's relationships seem to be like a means of survival for her. the way that she would say BJ's for PJs, I'm like, well, that's not survival. That's just like luxury in a way. Even though Randall, I saw through him, I'm like, this guy's not a real like Hollywood guy. Like there's something going on. But I think that she would align herself with James Kennedy romantically if his DJ career ever picks up, and she feels like there's maybe some stability there. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean that like I really do think that she's strategic in her relationships, honestly. And I think that right now James Kennedy, maybe after this season, and Time Magazine made an article saying he's the number one guy in the group, maybe now, but like I think in the past she didn't feel that it was a strategic move to be in a relationship with James Kennedy. That's just my thought. I think she's very strategic. So.
I think so too. And that's why I'm all the more curious of what her actual type is. Like, what guy will we see her settle down with? I do think that there is a possibility that she just won't, right? Because in a scene this episode, I think it was the finale, where she was talking to Ken and Lisa about how it doesn't seem possible to have a long-lasting marriage like they have in this kind of era, how she wants to go have another child on her own because she doesn't trust another man. You know, she might kind of go down that route and maybe later in life find someone. And I'm curious what that looks like for a stable Lala who does not need a fling and who does not need a sugar daddy, right? So that would be interesting to me at the end of the day. I know she recently like tweeted or Instagram that she doesn't see James as a stepdad, which doesn't surprise me. He's got a temper. I would not want that around my child either. So I'm with her on that. So Paris had two questions. First, Paris asked why Tom would say that to Sheena, that they were never friends. So Coco went over this a little bit earlier. She said that it's because Tom knows what's going to hurt you. And Sheena's biggest thing is trying to have friends and people around her and whatnot. And so he knew that that would hurt her the most. Now, Paris's other question is, maybe Sheena or Raquel could go on The Circle. Could you see a Netflix crossover, or would you think that there's like a non-compete or something going on with that streamer in particular?
Yeah, no, I think there has to be a non-compete clause there where they probably can't cross over because I think they're under NBC's umbrella. And it does make me wonder that like Stars on Mars thing. I wonder if it's an NBC show. I don't know. But yeah, I also think Sheena wouldn't go on The Circle because I think again, Sheena thrives, and her core of her, if you study any intention that Sheena has had throughout the show, it always goes back to fitting in a friend group. That is her, even more so than her relationships, wanting to have a boyfriend and a husband, which that's always been a huge intention. But ultimately, even when she was dating Rob, who could put up a TV in 7 minutes, like a huge part of that storyline and that relationship was that he had a house in Lake Arrowhead that they could all go hang out at. Like, again, her relationships even revolve around her proximity to a friend group. And so I think The Circle would be too isolating for Sheena. I don't think she could like last in a room for like 3 weeks filming by herself. Raquel, maybe. Again, I think that Raquel probably had people step in and like took her phone, because Ariana said on Watch What Happens Live that she saw that Raquel has been writing letters to the house to Tom Sandoval. And I had a family member, not in like this context at all. I had a family member who was really, really sick. And with she had anorexia, and they basically like almost had to 5150 her. It was my sister, and they put her in a home that she was in for I think it was like 63 days. I remember exactly like the day before they let her out, and she didn't have a phone those 63 days, and she had to write us letters to tell us how she was doing. And so the fact that Raquel is writing letters to the house makes me think that it's something serious like that, where even though it's kind of her own doing, I think people stepped in and like removed her from not just reality TV, but her phone. I didn't mean to go dark, but I say all that to say, I don't think Raquel will go on another reality show. I don't think the people around her will let her if they have control over her actions. That's what I think. Yeah. I think it's going to be hard for her to go back on TV.
And I honestly think that that is the best decision for her. It's not for everybody. And I think at this point, she has put in enough like seasons, enough years, enough time to say, listen, I'm done here at this point. So I do hope that they're able to kind of keep that influence over her, because I don't know that she's capable of making like informed decisions for herself in general, you know? So kudos
Yeah.
to her family for stepping in. She's lucky, right? Because some people don't have family that's going to look out for them like that at the end of the day.
Yeah, and when I look back on season 9, it was really like this it was setting her up to be the main character this season, but like I don't know if you remember at the reunion where she announces her breakup from James Kennedy, the last scenes of season 9 in the reunion are Raquel's dad and her family rallying around her in the green room, I think, and
Yes.
then ushering her off into cars and they drive away together. And I was like, wow, she's a great support system. She's going to be on top of the world. And so whenever like the news broke and kind of she's just been digging herself in a deeper hole, I always think about her family and I'm like, I wonder like what her parents think. They're probably like everyone can relate to having a family member who does something that's kind of self-sabotage and you're like, oh, like I just want to like shake them, but like you can't control them. They're an adult. So, but on a
No.
lighter note, yeah, I don't think Sheena would do the circle because she couldn't be isolated.
I feel it. Guys, this has been so fun recapping the finale episode of Vanderpump Rules with you and Coco Mocoe as well. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed chatting back and forth. If you did, please do make sure to give the stream a big thumbs up and to check Coco out. Follow her on TikTok. She's got a podcast called Ahead of the Curve that's really, really insightful as well. You recapped. Your Vanderpump Rules recap is up now on your podcast, right?
Yes, I was up to like 1 a.m. I even dive into their zodiac signs if you guys are interested in that. And yeah, it's on my podcast. So yeah, thank you for the shout out. I appreciate that.
Of course, check her out. And Coco, before we leave, what highlighter are you wearing? Because I keep looking at your nose like, I love
Yes.
this.
You know what's so funny? I got it at Marshall's and I think it's still like I don't think it's discontinued. I always say it's the Jaclyn Hill it's called Jaclyn Hill Extra Loose Highlighter. It's the best highlighter ever, like ever in the world. I have to like wipe it off because it gets really shiny, but like it does its job really well. So
I like it. That's another one that you can dive into. Every time I
I
hear the name,
know.
I'm like, wow.
Yes.
You guys, thank you so, so much
Thank
for your
you.
support of Coco. It is absolutely amazing. See you back next week for a recap of part 1 of the reunion. Next week, I'm going to be with Zach Reality and Kempire as well. So check us out and hopefully we'll get Coco back at another point also.
Oh my God. I love both those YouTubers you brought up. So I'm going to be tuning in. I'll be in the chat with you guys.
Yay. Can't wait. Thank you so, so much. Bye, everybody. Have a great evening and